Welcome to ChiroSphere, where we talk about all things chiropractic and some things, well, not so chiropractic. I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth, your host for ChiroSphere and CEO of ChiroHealth USA, the network that works for chiropractic. Today, I have the pleasure to interview a chiropractic trailblazer, Dr. Ryan Capra, President and CEO of Genesis. At the start of his career, he established Advanced Chiropractic and Wellness in Princeton, New Jersey, focusing on structural and functional correction, pediatric care, and family wellness. As part of his community outreach, he's taken his expertise to corporate audience, including notable names like Gold's Gym, Dow Jones, and Princeton University. In 2004, Dr. Capra's entrepreneurial spirit led him to found Genesis Chiropractic Software and Billing Network. This cloud-based practice management software, coupled with AI and big data analysis, revolutionized the industry, enhancing patient experiences and improving practice efficiency. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much, Ray. Great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again, sir.
Thank you for taking me back to the roots.
Yeah, absolutely. Our Crackerjack Research Committee finds out all this stuff. Brian, as I've said on many of my podcasts, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and I love hearing not just what people do, but the why behind it. So my first question is, what's your why, man?
Ultimately, the technology is ultimately a way to free up other chiropractors to see more patients and help them change more lives. If you think about the number of people on the planet, I hear chiropractors all the time, and I've said it myself, I think everybody should be under chiropractic care from the day they're born to the day they die, so to speak. And if you think about it, with 77,000 chiropractors and billions of people, we don't nearly have enough chiropractors, right? So we got to be more efficient, more effective, more profitable, all those things. We need to increase our capacity. We need to attract people, patients, but we also need to attract more chiropractors. And who's going to want to be a chiropractor if you're broke? So what I learned about when it came to technology and using technology in a different way to really manage the patient experience, ironically, I learned about in the billing world, the insurance billing world, which insurance billing was not my thing. It was part of my practice. But I met a couple of individuals. One was a computer science graduate from Princeton University, and his father is a PhD in mathematics, patents in AI. And they had built a technology for billing back 2000 or 2004. I met them in 2004, and I had this billing, issue, right? I was outsourcing my billing. I had no transparency, no control, no accountability. I had no idea if I was making the money I should. I was getting some checks in the mail, right? So I met them just coincidentally. I won't go into the full story, but met them, and they introduced this concept of the internet, the cloud technology in the cloud, right? Artificial intelligence, automated workflow, and it was for the billing, solve the billing problem. So I implemented it. My collections went up 40%.
Wow.
But what I learned is why that happened. Using AI and automated workflow, what it did for me in the cloud, I could see everything was going on with my insurance department, if you would. How many claims needed to be followed up on today before the end of the day, so to make sure I got paid every penny I deserved. And so that was where we started. But I saw that workflow as another way to use it immediately as a chiropractor. I said, well, what if it could tell me all of the patients or all the things I needed to do or my staff needed to do every single day to make sure my patient retention or their experience was optimized? And so that's where the journey really began. That's when Genesis started.
So you kind of created an operating system, software operating system for your practice.
Yeah, we started ground level in my practice. And the why behind it is ultimately I had technology in the past. I constantly had this situation where I'd wake up in the middle of the night or while you're driving, you're going to the grocery store and you're like, whatever happened to that patient? And you go back to your practice and you figure out what happened. And it's like, we didn't recall them when they missed a visit. They left without a future appointment. Their re-exams didn't have, something didn't process broke, right? And then you go and how many other patients did that happen on? And so you go and now you're looking at paper charts or through your computer or whatever it is, running reports, which is all reactive. It's all management by fire. And so, and I lost patients that were heartbreaking stories for me, and I never wanted to experience that again. And sorry, go ahead.
I'll
go on and on.
Yeah, that's all right. I've told people when you talk about we're always putting out fires. In my case, I found a lot of times I was the arsonist. You know,
Yeah.
we really didn't have things in place to really help us manage our patients. And, you know, it's like you said, you sit there and you look at the file cabinet with all these patient files, and it's like, where did they go?
Hmm.
So it sounds like you kind of closed the loop on that. Is there anything in your software that you'd like to share with people that is what you would consider new and innovative? I mean, clearly you've created an amazing operating system, but what's on the horizon, or
Well,
what have you recently implemented?
yeah, there's a lot of things. Well, one thing that's not too new is the CHUSA automation, right? So we have that set up so that if you are using CHUSA, your patients, what would be considered their payer is CHUSA. It'll
Right.
automatically adjust your fee and automatically allocate a portion of the patient's credit that's on their account to those visits as they occur. So it's really beautiful. Their patient balance is always clean and simple. And with CHUSA, it's kind of like a seamless thing. It's very nice. So
We appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, awesome little tool. Simple to build and makes it much easier for the practices to manage that way. But there's a lot going on with Genesis. As always, being in the cloud means you can kind of rebuild the plane as it's flying. So that's exciting. So there's everything from new navigation, new look, but also new flow on the navigation bar. That means how you get around the system. A new schedule system coming out. New documentation system is out and improving. We have a patient app, a doctor app. Those are out already. I know there's another one, new dashboards with AI dashboards, which are really cool. So those are relatively new, but they're improving over time as well. We're bringing really cool stats to practices. We have a new, what we're calling the rooming module, which is an automated way. You can do it either manually or automated. You can see all your rooms or areas of your practice and which patients are checked into those areas. When that area is empty, an AI voice will automatically tell it the next patient to go to whatever room they need to go to. And that can be in English and Spanish and a
Wow.
female, a male voice. You can customize the message. It's really, really cool. So that's one of the newer things that are out. And we're looking at a lot of things for the future. One of the big things I want to implement in the next year or so is marketing automation tied to this whole thing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so we can be part of the complete patient journey so have a real all-in-one solution from helping you attract patients to nurture them, to convert them into your office and so on. And then of course the system in the office is helping retain those and build excellent experiences and generate reviews and referrals.
You know,
So
that is clearly everything changed post-COVID, and everyone knows the challenges of hiring and retaining employees. And so, you know, a
yes.
lot of what you're talking about is not to replace people, but the
No.
reality is it is hard to find people to work and to manage the workflows. And so, you know, sound like you guys are on the leading edge of that. Let's
Yeah.
pivot a little bit and kind of talk about some of the medical billing and practice management. How have you seen reimbursement strategies evolve over the last 2 or 3 years in both terms of cash payments and insurance reimbursement? We always know that the insurance companies are playing the games. That's what they
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
What can chiropractors do to one up the insurance companies, if you will?
Yeah, the way I like to say it is level the playing field, because a lot of chiropractors don't realize that they're not picking on us because we're chiropractors. They
Oh
have
no.
a business to run, and the business is to be more and more profitable. It's their responsibility every single year. And what most chiropractors or even medical doctors or what any specialty, what they don't realize is that insurance companies make more than half of their profit on what's called the float. That's
Yep.
interest on your money. So that means they should have paid you in theory at the time of service, and there's no technical reason why they shouldn't or couldn't, I should say. If you think about it, what actually one of my business partners first started on Wall Street, and actually the foundation of Genesis is built on a technology that was used for hedge fund trading, the AI and automated trading. So what he realized is that this is ridiculous. There's way more complicated transactions that are happening on Wall Street every single day, and everybody by law is paid by the next day. So why aren't you, doctor, getting paid by the next day? And that's because they rigged the system. The system is rigged in their favor. And
Yeah.
that hasn't changed in 30, 40, 50 years. It's not going to change tomorrow. It's always going to be rigged. And the way that the fact that they don't pay you immediately, or that there's diagnosis codes or procedure codes or modifiers or documentation itself is is just part of the system. And the whole point is to delay you from getting the claim to them and then delay you from getting the money back from them. And in that time, they're collecting interest on every dollar that's not paid at the right time. So that's not going to change. So ever.
That is the system.
That is the game. So
Many years ago,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Many years ago, I had a good friend who used to work for one of the big insurance companies. I mean, he admitted, he said, yeah, we had a room. This is when everything was mailed in. He said, we had a room that was basically the black hole. And when claims would come in, on a daily basis, we would take a certain percentage of them and put them in the black hole. We knew they'd resubmit in time, and they got the float. It is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I believe our good friend Jay calls that insurance crimes.
yeah. I mean, it's literally that's how it started, right? And they just become more and more sophisticated with it, with now better technology and more artificial intelligence, and it's just going to get smarter. So they're profiling you on what you do and how long it takes you to follow up or submit from the date of service. And they're looking at all that stuff. In addition to all that, after they pay you, they audit you after and take the money back, plus penalties, plus interest. So that trend is not going to stop. So they're going to reimburse less, make it take longer. Hopefully you quit the game altogether. On the cash side, obviously, practices are collecting more and more cash.
Yep, no doubt. So how is AI or the technology that you have in place at least leveling that playing field? I mean, technically, what is it doing to help us at least stay even with them?
Well, the rules are the rules, right? And that we can debate that or not debate. They're created by the insurance companies, right? They created a huge leverage by consolidating insurance companies into very few, and by doing so, created leverage in lobbying, and by doing so, created the laws, the rules of insurance, so that again, even if they don't have to pay for 7 days or 14 days, it's way longer than they should have. So that's not going to change. The trick is, how do you get your claim to them as fast as possible? How do you verify, meaning at time of service? So in Genesis, for example, you have your documentation and your diagnosis and your procedure codes, and that could be cash or insurance, but you hit that button, the note's saved, and that note has to be very fast. The note's saved, it's signed, the claim is out the door. The system is looking for verification, notification coming back from the payer or clearinghouse, depending on which payer and what state and what doctor and all that, but it's verifying, okay, it's received, and then the clock starts ticking. So the clock is starting to tick, and let's say it's 14 days, for example. If that claim is not paid on that 14th day, the claim is then routed, we call it routed, to a follow-up person. And traditionally you call them a biller, but they didn't bill, right? They're a follow-up person.
Sure.
So what we've done is been able to scale this entire thing, right? So how do you beat insurance companies over thousands of clients, millions of dollars in claims constantly being generated and submitted? You need AI to take all those claims that are due for follow-up and route them to, if you can think of it like a computer terminal almost, where they sitting and they're looking at all the claims that are coming to them, and they're calling the payers and they're following up and they're documenting everything, and everything is tracked 100% accountable, timestamp, what they did, when they said it, if they changed a field, everything is captured, and you're keeping the insurance company accountable. In addition to that, that's just if they didn't pay on time, right? But they could deny, they could underpay, which is a sneaky little one that they do. Like you have an allowed amount, you're out of network. They allowed you $40 in the past, and all of a sudden they allow you 38 today on the same code. Well, what happened? So who's following up on the $2? Who even knows about the $2? Because to do that, you'd have to know every allowable for every CPT at every payer, and there's nobody that can do that manual labor, right? So it's the denial codes. The denial codes are different for every payer. You got to know how to interpret them. But technology in Genesis is doing that all the time, looking for all the exceptions, millions and millions of rules that we built in over 20 years into Genesis, and growing, because they're changing tactics and we're building rules. It's this little behind the scenes game that's being played, but that's the only way to do it, is that you follow up, you find every claim that needs to be followed up on, and you follow up on every claim, and we have hundreds of people making phone calls every single day. That's all they do.
Amazing. Well, everyone, if you would hang tight while we take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be back with you in about 30 seconds. Welcome back to our podcast with Dr. Brian. We're going to follow up with a couple more questions here. Documentation and coding seems to be the bane of our profession, but they're critical aspects of healthcare deliveries. How are you guys using AI to automate that workflow and make sure that we are compliant with our documentation?
Well, the AI that people know about today is different than the AI that we've been using for 20 years. It's evolving, right? So there's what it's been doing all this time is, for example, comparing what you documented against what's you've selected as diagnosis and procedure codes or modifiers or linking and all that stuff. So for example, if you documented, I adjusted one region, but you have 3 regions, it's going to flag you and, hey, you didn't do that, or maybe you did and you need to update your documentation, things like that, or specific codes need specific modifiers, or specific payers need specific modifiers, and sometimes specific payers need specific diagnosis linking. So all of those rules are built into documentation. What's happening in the future, what's going to happen in the future, I think with AI, it's different because the functionality and the capability, it's smarter. Intelligence is smarter and getting smarter, and it's really like exponentially growing how intelligent the AI is. What will start happening in offices? It's actually probably already in use in some cases, in some places in beta and whatnot, but they have this ambient AI that can just listen to your conversation with your chiropractor. Now, typically we don't have a long conversation with our patient that it can extrapolate what actually just happened, but on a new patient exam or a re-exam or something like that, definitely I could see that being used in chiropractic. Also, just the fact that will be able to just communicate with your documentation. Just say, patient came in pretty much the same as last visit, but change this changed, that changed, and it'll just do it.
Yeah.
And code it and submit it, and you just need to sign off on it. Things like that are going to happen. We actually are looking right now it wasn't a job in the past, but it is now, like a chief AI officer. So we're bringing that on board, and we're looking at all the possibilities, and even in support, customer support, where you have a question, and before you get some kind of like canned link to some place in the help materials, it can actually start answering those questions with the link, but more intelligently, almost like a person. And I think that is actually going to happen within a year or two.
Yeah,
that'll actually start happening.
Well, I'm a big fan of AI. One of our folks that's worked with us for years, Johan, really took a deep dive into AI. And I don't know if you're aware, but we recently launched Chiro AI.
I saw that.
And we preloaded it, if you will, with all the documentation guidelines from CMS. It's not just like Chat GPT, it's Chat GPT that has had a focus on chiropractic information.
Yeah, it learns.
For those that aren't aware of it, that's a free thing that we put out there. Go to CHUSA.com and check it out. I mean, Brian, it blew my mind the first time I told it. I said, listen, I want to write me a series of 10 emails about pregnancy and chiropractic.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, literally, in less than a minute, there they are. And then I had a little fun. I said, do that in the voice of George Carlin, and then do that in the voice of Shakespeare, just for fun. It is absolutely some amazing stuff.
It can start doing it in the doctors. If you give it also some audio of yourself, you can say, hey, record this in my voice. It's ridiculous what's happening. But another application in practice is scheduling new patients, chat bots, but actually when somebody, we talked about marketing automation before, when somebody's seeing an ad and clicking through something and then actually wants to schedule, it can actually communicate with that person, and they'll have a hard time knowing it's not a real person and schedule your patient for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So what is the software doing, or how can practices leverage the technology to really, like we're talking about, personalize patient experiences and their overall satisfaction?
Well, there's a lot of customizations that you can build into the system. For example, you might want to check patients at the door that are checking in, if you would, that have a re-exam coming up, or a reevaluation, a re-sign coming up, or you might not want to stop them, but you might want to trigger some workflow to your team that says the next visit, do this, or the next visit, do that. And it'll remind you on that next visit to do that thing. So
Mhm.
let's say a re-exam's coming up. You might, the visit before you stop, it stops the patient. It tells you what to say, basically, right? Hey, you have a reevaluation coming up. Next visit, leave yourself an extra 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is in your practice. Here's some information to get prepared for it, so you know what to expect, and so on and so forth. In the meantime, maybe you trigger some workflow to your staff in the background. If it's a re-sign, as opposed to just a re-exam, check-in kind of appointment, maybe you trigger, hey, re-verify benefits, create a new financial, whatever the case may be, recommendations for care. But if it's a task, somebody owns it. So when they're in Genesis, if it's a doctor or the CA or the office manager, they log in and they see their to-do items, tasks before the end of the day. If we do all this stuff, that's the most we can do to be prepared for today, tomorrow, to get this patient experience to be top notch. Those are simple examples, but if you have inventory and the inventory goes below threshold, to reorder it. So you don't want to go to recommend it to a patient if it's ever happened to you, docs out there. Hey, you need this. Oh, we're out of that. That's the worst place to be. It makes you look bad. It's frustrating. There's endless applications to it.
There's a million and one things that have to be remembered in the day-to-day operation of a practice. And I don't know how our chiropractic assistants have done it over the years. And, hopefully they look at things like this as, this makes my job easier, rather than, one more thing to do. There's just no way anyone can keep that all over
It's impossible to remember every single step, no matter how well you document it and how your manuals and all that stuff. There's always something that can get, in the Ritz-Carlton, they have in their pocket, like the people that clean the rooms and all this, they actually have in their pocket the checklist to make the bed. It's like 30 something steps. And you would think, okay, you make the bed. But it's not. There's a process, and you will forget what it is. And sometimes you're just too busy to do it all, to write that. And you want sticky notes all over the place, and you need the system to tell you to be proactive on your behalf, because otherwise, what are you going to do? You lose the patient, you check the thing, then you're running reports, which are not actionable, they're not accountable, they're not anything. They're just, wow, this is what I just messed up for the past 5 months. That's all that it does. It doesn't fix it in real time. We're chiropractors. We're proactive about health. There is a health to your practice. There is a health to your patient experience, and it needs to be maintained every day. And if
point. We were talking about the reimbursement issues and the revenue cycle, as they call it. And I don't know if you've noticed this when you onboard new clinics, but we certainly have seen an awful lot of it. The No Surprise Act required all healthcare providers to give what's considered a good faith estimate. And what blows my mind is how many practices that we encounter that never really sit down with the patient to go over their financial arrangements. And it's that ambiguity that causes a lot of people to stop doing business with any company, particularly in healthcare. So docs, if you're
any business,
if you're not giving a good faith estimate, you need to get that cleaned up. And if you guys want a sample financial policy with a good faith estimate thing, again, hit our website. We've got those resources there for you. That really should be your first step in revenue cycle management, is make sure that the patient knows what they owe, what their responsibilities are, what their payment options are. Those are all things that are critical. It's just, and again, I get blown away sometimes at, what do you mean you don't do a financial report of findings? We're great at clinical report of findings because that's important to us as doctors, but we got to think from the patient's perspective. That's an important component in making a decision about whether they're going to, engage you for their care and follow through with it.
Yeah, setting expectations or not setting expectations up front is like, not doing it is a relationship killer in any relationship. Forget business. If you don't have clear expectations and boundaries about what's going to happen here, then you just wind up on a different page with the other person. And
my good friend
Aaron,
Aaron,
open to interpretation what page you're each on, and it almost never works.
Yeah, my good friend and colleague who has worked for us for years, and I know you know him, Aaron Reynolds, talks about you got to have expectations, but he adds a second part to that. You have to have expectation and agreement. You have an expectation of a patient, but if you don't have the agreement, you're kind of screwed, man. I mean, it
Yeah.
just doesn't work out. So,
Right.
does your software and the platform deal with multi-specialty care for practices that are multidisciplinary? But what have you seen as the challenges in being able to manage typical chiropractic workflow, add in, say, a nurse practitioner, a medical doctor, or a physical therapist? Kind of things are in place to help them manage, I guess, their processes because they are a bit different.
They are. So the short answer is yes. We definitely support multi-specialty practices, probably better now than ever before, but we've always been, I think, ahead of the curve on it. But things are evolving too. And we when we first started this, I was a chiropractor and we pretty much focused on chiropractic. But as we grew and the industry changed and all that stuff, next thing you know, existing client wants to bring in a PT or a nurse practitioner. They're adding services, and we had to kind of evolve with that, right? So one of the things is that might seem like a subtle nuance, but documentation by itself, the repetitiveness of collecting of the same information by each specialty
Mhm.
in the same under the same roof doesn't really make sense when you think about it. So some information for a patient is universal: their family history, social history, maybe even their complaints. In some cases, their range of motion, things that you find in if you have a chiro and a PT, for example, all the range of motion and all those things,
Some
they're
overlap.
they're all overlap. So why take it twice? And why does a doctor need to enter data into patient history and social history and even the chief complaints and all this stuff, or even outcome assessment tools? So we've added a lot of automation. So the front end would be patient can fill in their documentation, their intake forms online on their app, whatever, and they're entering their family history and their social history and their complaints. And based on their complaints, if you do this and you want this in your practice, it can automatically offer them the correct outcome assessment tools to fill in. So they're filling all that in, right? Next, they're in your room, and all that family history, social history, that's you open your exam template, it's already in there. And the outcome assessment tools and the scores and all that stuff. Now you just have to do your exam. You want to verify what they said on their family history and social history, all that stuff. But now you're just filling in the stuff you do. In the future, that'll be AI, right? Now you're just telling
Yeah.
it what to fill in. But right now, that's what's happening. Next, they go into the PT for their assessment. Well, when they open it, why do they have to re-enter ranges of motion and all this? They don't. It's already in there. The stuff that that we know already is true. Now they have to do their own evaluations, which might be slightly different, and they have exercises and things like that. We have web exercise integration. A lot of PTs like as well. But stuff like that, we're just removing redundancies that are there for no good reason other than technology didn't exist for that before.
Yeah.
Separating out the charges and the billing and the claims follow-up per specialty and dashboards and all that exists. So there's a lot of things. The rooming module now, it's getting even more sophisticated where it'll know your next visit for the office. Today, you did your chiro, you're going to go to your PT. It's going to tell you where to go when that room is ready for you.
That's awesome.
So these practices get very sophisticated. One of the biggest hurdles is the care plan. When I know I'm not saying the care plan, presentation of a care plan, because there's kind of like two things, but how the visits are tracked and the specific CPT codes are tracked. And you have multiple specialties that could do multiple CPTs but different fees depending on which one is doing it. It gets very, very, very sophisticated.
Makes my brain hurt.
It does. It does. It's really crazy. But one of the things that was one of the secrets to our success is that we solved the hardest problem first. The hardest problem has always been getting paid by insurance companies. That will always be the hardest problem. And that wasn't because I was heavily insurance. It was just part of my practice. But what I've seen in the industry generally is they build this nice, fancy, pretty front end schedule. It looks really modern and what have you. And when you get really down to the nitty gritty of the billing, they built that last, if they built it at all in some cases right now.
Yeah.
And because it's so complicated, that's the real heavy lift. But what we did uniquely is built this billing engine, which includes cash. It's not just insurance.
Right.
We built that engine first. And we continue to build that as the core of the product. And around that sits the scheduling and the documentation and the marketing and all that other stuff. Because that problem has to be solved for us to get paid.
Yeah. I've recently had an occasion to have to go see one of the docs in a big orthopedic group. I had a piece of glass in my finger that really got embedded and had to be I had to have surgery to get it out. I mean, it went in that deep, and unbelievably beautiful facility. I mean, everything is so high tech. Everything is just top notch. They're running on Epic software that the medical community uses a lot of, but they still give me my damn paperwork. And they want me to fill out my insurance information when I know damn well they're going to scan my insurance card. And then on every page, it's asking me like 4 different times for my date of birth, my spouse. The redundancy in the paperwork is like, come on, folks. I mean, you're running an amazing software. Get off the dadgum paper and stop asking me the same thing over and over and over. It is, from a patient perspective, no wonder people don't like going to the doctor. I mean,
Yeah,
they bring them to such a bad experience.
we brought on the team because of the multi-specialty thing, not in full, but in part because of the multi-specialty problem, if you would, or evolution as this is happening in our profession. That we have our chief technology, our chief medical officer runs the development of the actual documentation flow and some other parts of the system too, because it's exactly that. Like he was a surgeon for 10 years and has all this experience and actually trying to use these other systems like Epic and so on, which is a huge company, right? It's like a massive, It's Epic, it's huge. But but it's ironic that they actually, now we have medical doctors looking at our documentation saying this is better than Epic. And I don't know if you gave them, based on what you said, it's not such a high bar, but the documentation for the patient and filling that stuff in is integral to making that part of the experience for the patient and the people providing care for those people, just making it more streamlined, more efficient, more effective, where they can actually spend more time, not imagine shuffling papers. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember it's been 10, 15, probably, at least that long, but when a lot of the medical profession moved towards having to use electronic health records and all of that. And I mean, you'd go to the doctor and he's sitting there doing this and you don't make any eye contact, and we kind of lost that human touch. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully at some point, the AI is there to where you can sit down and have that conversation with the patient, and then it extract what's clinically important and important for the notes, because otherwise, I mean, you basically might as well be talking to a terminal, or what it used to be.
Most medical doctors will tell you that EHR and the requirement for EHR made their patient care much worse. In combination with reimbursements going down and them having to rush through a point, like actually be fast, like a chiropractor, like they got double whammy. So you got your new EHR that you have to document and all this coding and submit electronically and all this, and you have to do it faster than you used to do it in the past. So they wound up, patient care suffered, and it's not because the doctor's a worse doctor necessarily, but you have a
tell you another little story about another orthopedic group that my daughter had to go to years ago. Again, wonderful group of docs, but I mean, it would take you forever. I mean, if you had a broken bone, it's going to be 4 or 5 days for you. I mean, it's just the delays. And when you show up, you're there for 2 or 3 hours. And then fast forward about a year, she had to go back for a follow-up. And we were in the room in about 5 to 7 minutes. And I asked the doc that we were seeing, I said, what changed? I used to have to block the morning off or the afternoon off to come see you. He said, what changed? He said, Ray, you won't believe it. We hired a guy from the fast food industry who does time and motion studies. And he said, it has made all the difference in the world. I mean, I applaud them for doing that. But, they got so many complaints that people are just, I don't have a half a day to go sit in the doctor's office.
No. It seems like we all got less time and more things to do these days.
Boy, isn't that truth? And fewer people to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Brian, having been in practice for 38 years, I changed softwares several times, and sometimes I literally straddled one software to another over a year because I didn't want to pull the plug. What's the onboarding process like, and how traumatic is it for docs, or how do you make it less traumatic? Let's put it that way.
We'll put it that way. Yeah, that change is hard. And it's not necessarily the moving or learning the system or moving information. It's just change.
Yeah.
Physically, how you're clicking around the system, just changing the way you have to think. Well, number one, the benefit, you got to keep in mind what's the benefit: being more effective, more efficient, better relationships, more revenue, all those things.
Why?
The freedom that comes with that, the peace of mind. You have to have a good motivation first. You got to think about why you're really doing this. Are this system's going to be sunset at some point. You got to remember the decision you have to make. Even today, most systems are trying to get into the cloud. We've been there over 20 years. You're going to have to move to the cloud anyway. You might as well pick somebody that's actually has experience with it. But other than that, it is a pain, but there's a lot of data transfer, right? So, and we have a white glove service we started about 2 years ago, which means we take of course, all your patient demographics, but we can even take things like your x-rays. We can map out all your scheduled appointments. So what we would typically do, like as an example, we configure your appointment types and the colors and all that stuff for you, the length and all that. And we would go into your current system for the week and we see all the patients scheduled, and we schedule the same patients out in Genesis. And for those patients, we move x-rays, if we need to do patient balances, whatever we need to do for those patients, the docs can go in ahead of time and create their first note for those patients. And for the most part, those patients, you're done for that week with those patients. You have a few walk-ins or something like that. You got to catch up on the end of the day, the end of the shift. But the next week is the same thing. We're already ahead of you, right? So we got everybody mapped out, all the data over, check it, everything looked good. Yep, good, go. Doc does a notes. So it takes time, but we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Moving those x-rays over, and if you do that, or some of the documentation and PDFs or patient balances or scheduling their care plan, their scheduled out visits, it's a drain. The reason we do it, of course, it's to create a better experience for our customers, but it's not just that's just a pain in the butt. What happens is when you learn any new system, probably what you learn in the first few months is 80% of what you'll ever know. That's it, right? You might pick up another 20% over however much longer you use it. We have new features come out that we tell them every which way you can tell them. Right? They don't recognize it. So we're always trying. We're improving the system all the time. But most of what you need to know is learned in that first time. And we definitely don't want you not focused on learning the system by moving x-rays from one system to another.
Sure. Yeah, the tedious stuff.
So we want to remove that as much as possible so that the system works as best possible on day one, and that you really gain a bigger amount of information, knowledge of the system in that first 2-3 months is critical.
Yeah, it's a process, not an event, for sure.
It takes time.
So if people want to learn more about Genesis, what's the best way to connect with you guys?
You go to genesischiropracticsoftware.com. That's the easy place. You go to our Instagram, Genesis Chiropractic Software, Facebook, see us anywhere, YouTube as well. They'll see a bunch of videos on there. If you want to schedule, you can click right on a button on the website. I think we have a QR code we shared. You can also get 2 QR codes, one for scheduling, one for getting one of my ebooks, What Insurance Companies Don't Want You to Know, and How They Keep Your Money, and use it to audit other chiropractors. So you can get it all those different ways. If you can't get to the QR code, I think it's genesischiropracticsoftware.com/ebook if you want that ebook.
Got it. Good deal. So I got a couple of just for fun questions. Who's your hero and why?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a sneaky one, Ray. I should say now. The more I lost my dad in September, and he was a quiet guy, but the more time goes by that he's not here, the more he's just said a lot without saying anything, and a lot of those times, and just led by example. And I see how much he's missed. If that's all I can do is has had a beautiful family. Yeah. And that's all I can do.
Special. Yeah. I lost my dad in December, and just kind of wrapping up his estate and everything. And man, it is, as my sisters and I found out, we lost our mom in 2020 and him. And there's something different when you wake up the day after and you realize you don't have parents. I mean, even at 67 years old, it's like, wow, this feels different. Let's lighten it up a little bit. So what talent do you have that most people don't know about?
My wife says I'm the best cooks that she's ever.
What's your specialty?
Mostly barbecue. No, it's mostly grilling and smoking and all that stuff. But I love a great rack of lamb, or skirt steak, something like that.
Yeah. What's the worst job you ever had?
Landscaping. It's easy. I had a guy, probably one of the only jobs I got to think about it, that I just walked out on the job. Not only is it a difficult job, but the boss I had was such a jerk. So I remember it to this day. He looked like Buddy Holly, just like a spitting image of Buddy Holly. His name was, I can't remember his name, but he was
Your
just,
memory's protecting you from the memory.
oh my God, he was such a jerk. He was such a jerk. And it was one thing, we were pulling weeds out of around this building all day long. My hands were stuck at the end of the day. And he, on top of it, he was just a jerk.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Great
you know what,
motivation to
man?
go to chiropractic college.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was in college at the time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you spending some time with us today, Brian. What I've really enjoyed about these podcasts is, I see you at events, and it's for such a short period of time. And,
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed doing this because you really kind of get to know the person
Yeah,
a little
man.
bit more than we normally do. So, again, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks to everyone for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe and share the podcast with your friends. Let us know who you'd like to hear from in the future and what topics you'd like us to cover, and we'll do our best to deliver. If you want to learn more about Chiro Health USA and how we can help you develop a compliant, profitable discount strategy that will absolutely grow your practice, income, and more importantly, your profitability, call us at 888-719-9990. or visit our website at CHUSA.com. That's how you spell CHUSA, to find out why Chiro Health USA is the network that works for chiropractic and you. Thanks again, Brian, and everybody. Make it a great day.